This wild story kicks off in Wallachia way back in 1455. A stunning young woman named Lisa, probably in her 20s, decides to take a seriously risky trip to Dracula's castle. She strolls right past a bunch of skeletons stuck on pitchforks, like it's no big deal, even though it's pretty obvious she could end up just like them if things go south. When she finally gets a good look at Dracula's castle, she's totally freaked out. It's just as creepy as the legends say. Still, she pushes forward and somehow makes it inside, armed with nothing but a little dagger to protect herself from the most powerful vampire out there. Dracula spots her from afar, and curious as hell, teleports right up to her, wondering why anyone would be dumb enough to walk straight into his lair. Lisa explains she's not there to cause trouble. She actually wants to learn from his knowledge of science so she can help people and save lives. Her gutsy attitude throws Dracula off, and he's intrigued. He decides to show her his room full of ancient wisdom and knowledge. Lisa is blown away by what she sees, and starts trying to convince Dracula to see humans differently, even though they're often cruel and superstitious. When he asks her why she's so determined, she says it's because she wants to make the world a better place. Her words hit Dracula right in the feels, and in just a few minutes, he's already taken a liking to her. Fast forward about 20 years, and things take a dark turn. The church accuses Lisa of practicing witchcraft and other evil stuff. Bishop Mark orders her to be burned at the stake. Why? Because she knows chemistry, and apparently, that's enough to make people think she's in cahoots with the devil. Even the mayor admits he's curious about chemistry, but quickly zips it when the bishop gives him a look. As Lisa burns, she begs Dracula not to take revenge on the humans. Bishop Mark, thinking she's praying to the devil, just laughs. Meanwhile, Dracula has been traveling the world, and when he finally gets back to Lisa's village, he's hit with a gut punch. Turns out, he and Lisa were married, still wearing the ring to prove it. As he walks toward her home, which is now just a pile of rubble, he runs into an old woman who's there to pay her respects. When he asks about Lisa, the woman tells him the bishop accused her of witchcraft and had her executed. The old lady speaks kindly about Lisa, calling her a great doctor and a good person, but Dracula is wrecked. He realizes his wife is gone, and blood-red tears stream down his face. He starts blaming himself for trying to live like a regular human to make Lisa happy. Consumed by rage, Dracula starts to lose it, but he manages to calm down just enough to tell the old woman to pack up her family and leave the country that night. After delivering the warning, he transforms into a fiery figure and flies off, leaving the old lady completely stunned. Back in the city, Lisa's bones crumble to ash, and the crowd cheers like it's some kind of party. The mayor offers to grab some drinks with Mark, but Mark shoots him down, saying he's got to meet up with the archbishop. While these two clowns are chatting, the fire behind them gets wild, and bam, Dracula shows up. Everyone's freaking out, but Dracula doesn't waste time and demands to know why his wife was burned alive. Mark, being bold, says Lisa was into witchcraft. He even disses Dracula, calling him some made-up nonsense from black magic. Dracula's pissed, but he keeps his cool and straight-up promises to wipe out all humans in Wallachia in a year. He warns them to pack up and leave if they want to live. Then, like a boss, he flies off, leaving the sky raining fire. Back at his castle, Dracula's rage takes over. He's smashing books and breaking bottles, ready to summon an army straight out of hell to get revenge on humanity. His son, Alucard, storms in and calls him out, saying this plan is a terrible idea and there's no coming back from it. Alucard begs his dad to just take out the person who killed Lisa and move on, but Dracula's not having it. He argues that not a single human spoke up to defend Lisa, and now he's got nothing but hate for them. What really sets him off, though, is when Alucard says he'll stop him. That's it. Dracula attacks his own son, and you can guess how that goes. Fast forward a year, the people of Wallachia are partying it up at the church in Targovist, celebrating that they've made it despite Dracula's warning. The archbishop, who's so fat he can't even walk, gets carried in by priests while his followers cheer him on. He starts mocking Dracula's threats, but then the sky turns blood red, and it literally starts raining blood. This dude doesn't even realize he's in deep trouble until it's too late. An earthquake hits, and the archbishop ends up on the ground with a shard of glass stuck in his chest. The church goes up in flames, and the fire takes the shape of Dracula's face in the sky, reminding everyone he gave them a year to leave, but instead, they stayed and mocked him. Without mercy, Dracula unleashes a swarm of demons to tear everyone apart. It's a full-blown massacre. In minutes, Targoviste is a blood-soaked mess with body parts everywhere. Once the carnage is over, Dracula shows up again, ordering his demons to spread the destruction to the rest of Wallachia. A few days later, two idiots at a bar are having some twisted conversation about a guy who fell in love with a goat. Yeah, let's not go there. What matters is that their weird chat catches someone's attention. Then, out of nowhere, a scared peasant bursts into the bar, freaking out about Dracula's demon army. But even with all this chaos, some loudmouth named Bosha starts ranting about the powerful families running the show. One of the families he mentions, the Belmonts, grabs a guy's attention in the bar, and you just know things are about to get messy. As Bosha starts ranting about how much he hates the Belmont family, this dude sitting in the back is all ears, soaking in every word. At some point, Bosha heads over to the bartender to grab more drinks. While digging through his pocket for coins, he spots a crest on the guy's vest and realizes he's repping the Belmont family. At first, the dude tries to deny it, but things get heated fast when Bosha accuses his family of causing the attacks attacks on humans. Bosch convinced the Belmonts are into some dark magic, and their shady business brought Dracula's demons down on everyone. Hearing this, the Belmont guy tries to peace out, but Bosch clocks him right in the face. Then comes a brutal kick to the family jewels, probably ended any chance of kids for him. While he's doubled over in pain, the dude finally fesses up and says he's Trevor Belmont. But Trevor's not going down easy. He counters Bosch's next move and knocks him to the ground. Now it's a full-on brawl, with 3 guys from the bar jumping in to take on Trevor. The first 2 are no big deal for him, but the last one manages to knock him out. And yep, another kick to the nuts this time. Trevor's literally begging for mercy for his future kids. Round 2 kicks off when Trevor gets back on his feet and starts taking down Bosch's crew one by one. After handing out some serious beatdowns, Trevor stumbles outside, throws up, and crashes under a tree for the night. The next morning, he wakes up, heads out of the woods, and spots Gresset, the next city on his journey. Meanwhile, in Gresset, the place is a total nightmare thanks to Dracula's demons. People are dropping like flies, wives, kids, you name it. The whole city's drowning in blood and chaos. Trevor sneaks into the city through a waste pipe just to grab some breakfast. On the other side, he sees a bunch of teens dumping a pile of bodies under a bridge. Not exactly a warm welcome. He heads straight to the market, buys himself some meat, and chows down while chatting with a weapons dealer. The guy tells him this wild story about a sleeping hero buried under the catacombs. Trevor's kinda amused but brushes it off and goes to learn more about what's going on in the city. Everyone he talks to is freaking out about the demons and blaming a group of speakers living in the city for all the trouble. While wandering around, Trevor spots 2 priests roughing up an old speaker in an alley. The way they're treating the old guy really pisses him off, but he tries to stay out of it. That doesn't last long, though when the priests start threatening to kill the speaker, Trevor steps in. He whips out his weapon and smacks the weapon right out of one priest's hand. The bearded priest starts crying like a baby and tells his bald buddy to take Trevor down. Baldy charges at Trevor like a total amateur and pays the price. Trevor dodges every move the guy throws at him and ends the fight by whipping Baldy's left eye clean out of its socket. As Baldy's feeling down about losing his eye, Trevor tells the bearded priest to scram and never mess with the old man again. Once they're gone, the old man thanks Trevor for stepping in and saving him from the priests. He agrees to let Trevor walk him back to his place. On the way, the old guy spills the beans that he's got 11 people with him, but one of them is missing. When they get to the house, Trevor meets the rest of the group, who turn out to be helping folks in need. Turns out, Trevor knows a thing or two about these people, called speakers, because someone in his family had dealt with them before. He cuts to the chase and asks why they're in Gresset. One of them starts to explain, but Trevor butts in, saying the locals are blaming them for the demon attacks. The elder claps back, saying it's all lies from the church, and that the church is the reason Dracula's demons are here in the first place. He talks about Lisa, who was unfairly burned in Targovist, and Trevor realizes just how messed up the whole situation is. When Trevor presses again, the elder explains that they're in Gresset because the town needs help. He says they're sticking around to care for the sick and injured, even with all the chaos going on. He also mentions something about a sleeping savior, but Trevor brushes it off as just a myth. It doesn't take long for Trevor to figure out that the missing speaker went off looking for this so-called savior. Trevor doesn't seem too fazed, and tells the speakers they should leave town to save their own skins. That's when one of them drops the bombshell that the missing person is the elder's daughter. Hearing that, Trevor offers to go find her, or at least her body, so the elder and his people can get out of town safely. After the chat, Trevor heads out of the building, munching on an apple. That afternoon, the guy heads west of the church in Gresset and steps into a building that leads down to the catacombs. Inside, he lights up a torch to check out the place. Then he hears some noise coming from below and decides to figure out what's up. As he heads down the stairs, the floor gives way, and boom, he crashes down to a lower level. Funny enough, he tries to walk and falls flat again. After brushing it off and getting back up, he spots Elder's granddaughter, but she's been turned to stone. As he gets closer, a massive cyclops barges into the room and tries to turn him into stone too. Now Trevor's in a fight for his life, dodging the cyclops' magic laser beams. Using his quick thinking, speed, and size, he sets a trap for the beast. His plan works, and he finishes the cyclops off with a dagger straight to the eye. As the monster hits the floor, its magic fades, and Elder's granddaughter is back to normal. Once she's good, the girl tries to convince Trevor to go find some sleeping savior, but he's not having it. He's done with all these legends and shuts her down, even telling her that everyone thinks she's dead. The girl, shocked, introduces herself as Sypha Belnades, but Trevor couldn't care less. After a while, he leads the way back to Elder's house, and Sypha tags along. Elder is over the moon to see Sypha alive since he thought she was gone for good, but Trevor doesn't waste any time. He tells the speakers they need to get out of the city. The whole sleeping savior thing comes up again, and Trevor shoots it down, saying the place with the Cyclops looks way too much like Dracula's castle. Elder's stunned when Trevor says the person below the catacombs isn't a savior. As Trevor walks off, Sypha throws some shade his way, calling him rude and wishing bad luck on him. Later, Trevor gets surrounded by a bunch of priests who say the bishop wants to see him. Even though he's been excommunicated, Trevor agrees to go with them. They take him to the church, where Bishop Mark, who's clearly not all there, is running the show. Right away, Trevor realizes this guy isn't from Gresset. They get into it, and Trevor asks why the bishop is targeting the speakers. Mark goes on about how non-believers bring demons into the world. He even doubles down on burning Lisa, saying it was the right thing to do and he doesn't regret it. Cutting to the chase, Mark offers Trevor a deal. Stay out of his business with the speakers, and he'll let Trevor live. But he warns Trevor to leave the city before sundown, or he's a dead man. So Trevor's finally seeing that Mark's got a pretty narrow-minded take on what's good, bad, right, or wrong. Dude's all fired up defending his family, but then chills out once he realizes how clueless the bishop is when it comes to logic. In the end, Trevor bails on the church and heads straight to Elder's place to give them a heads up. He lays it out for Elder, saying they've got to get out of town before sundown or they're toast. Even with the warning, Sypha's like, no way I'm ditching the helpless folks in Gresset. Elder backs her up, saying the church is feeding everyone lies. He even reminds Trevor about all the trash the church spread about his family to keep people away from them. This gets Trevor thinking twice about his beliefs, but he still decides to move the speakers out of the building. As the sun sets, the creepy night creatures start gearing up to attack Gresset, while the townsfolk grab their pitchforks and torches, ready to hunt down the speakers. In no time, the whole town's swarming around Elder's house. One guy busts in, but the speakers are already gone. Trevor's still there though, and when the priests demand answers, he's like, they're safe, don't worry about it. Meanwhile, Elder and the speakers are hiding out below the catacombs where they took down that Cyclops. Back on the surface, Trevor refuses to give up the speakers, and for that, he gets slapped around a bit. Things heat up when Trevor whips out his dagger, ready to throw down with 5 priests. He lands a few hits, then makes a break for it, pulling a rope that collapses the entrance behind him. Outside, he takes aim at a big old crucifix, and when it crashes down, the townsfolk freak out and scatter. While they're distracted, Trevor bolts for an alley. On his way out, a gang of priests jumps him, and Baldy shows up again, looking for another round. Trevor pulls his sword, dodges all of Baldy's moves, and even uses the guy as a human shield against incoming arrows. One of those arrows nails Baldy's good eye, leaving him completely blind. The fight doesn't last long. Trevor takes out the rest of the priests like it's nothing. Meanwhile, up in the sky, a swarm of flying demons is circling Gresset, ready to dig into their midnight feast. Amid all the craziness going down outside, screams, blood, the whole 9 yards, Bishop Mark is just chilling inside the church, nose deep in a book, totally clueless. He's all smiles when the door creaks open, thinking the speakers are toast. But nope, turns out the demons are gunning for him instead. See, Mark had cut a shady deal with the demons. The speakers dead by sundown. That's why he was so hellbent on getting rid of them earlier. But here's the kicker: the gay demon strolls in, flashing a grin, and starts talking about how much he's into Mark's flesh. The dude's sarcastic jabs leave Mark shaking in his boots because he knows he's screwed. Long story short, the demon turns Mark into a tasty snack and literally eats him alive. Meanwhile, Trevor's out in the city, running like his life depends on it. Spoiler, it does. He's quickly surrounded by a mob of pissed off townsfolk, but Sypha swoops in with some fire magic and clears a path for him, keeping the crowd off his back. As they move along, Trevor spots this shady bearded priest and calls him out for a duel. The priest, clearly freaked out, pulls out a dagger and starts backing away, realizing Trevor isn't messing around. Trevor flips the situation on its head, pointing out to the crowd how sketchy it is for a priest to be packing a deadly weapon. Then, he spills the tea on all the priest's dirty deeds, including how the bishop's actions brought Dracula's wrath down on humanity. That's all it takes for the mob to turn on the priest, stabbing him to death. Out of nowhere, there's a massive explosion in the distance, grabbing everyone's attention. Demons start tearing through people like paper and make a beeline for Trevor's spot. Thinking fast, Trevor rallies the villagers, telling them to follow his lead since his family's got a rep for demon slaying. He asks for holy water and salt while the pitchfork crew gears up for a fight. Sypha throws up a massive ice wall to funnel the demons straight toward the pitchfork squad. Once the wall's sealed, the demons charge in, ready to kill. At Trevor's signal, the pitchfork guys go to work, while the rest of the villagers chuck salt and holy water at the demons. Things get wild when Trevor busts out his enchanted whip, smacking a demon so hard its insides explode. The villagers, hyped up by Trevor's moves, start fighting back with more confidence, but the demon who ate the bishop isn't about to let Trevor off easy. He locks onto Trevor and charges, but in his rush, he falls into an ice trap Sypha set up. While he's stuck, the demon starts ranting about having backup from hell, but Trevor doesn't let him finish. He takes the demon out with his whip, and the demon's explosion blows a hole in the ground. The floor gives way, and Trevor and Sypha go tumbling in. On the flip side, Trevor learns the hard way that the place is rigged with traps. Freaked out, he bolts, with Sypha dodging massive boulders to avoid getting flattened. But their bad luck doesn't stop there when they hit the gear room. One of the huge gears crashes down. Luckily, they both grab onto a sturdy metal frame, barely avoiding a deadly fall. They finally make it deeper into the building, but Trevor accidentally steps on a button that unlocks a coffin in the middle of the room. The coffin creaks open, and Sypha's jaw drops as Alucard steps out. Trevor's not convinced though, he's skeptical, even if Sypha's story checks out. He thinks Alucard might be bad news and straight up tells him he doesn't see him as a savior. Trevor's got his reasons after all. Nobody alive knows what Dracula looks like, and the fact that Alucard's a vampire only makes Trevor more suspicious. Alucard tries to brush off Trevor's attitude, but finally challenges him to a fight to see what he's got. The fight kicks off, and Alucard uses magic to summon his sword. Trevor doesn't waste a second and cracks his whip at him, but he's gonna need to step it up if he wants to take Alucard down. Trevor keeps his distance, using his enchanted whip, but Alucard dodges his moves like it's nothing and closes the gap. Then, Trevor pulls off a sick aerial move, knocking Alucard to the ground. Alucard bounces back fast though, and disarms Trevor, tossing his whip aside. Round 2 starts, and Trevor switches to his sword. Alucard's crazy fast, so Trevor has to rely on predicting his moves just to keep up. Even with all his effort, it's clear Trevor can't match Alucard's speed. Things get wild when Trevor goes low and kicks Alucard right in the family jewels. Alucard's not impressed, snapping, "Have some class," before cutting through Trevor's knife and landing a solid punch that knocks him down. As Trevor's flat on the ground, Alucard moves in to finish him off, but Trevor stabs him with a dagger. Alucard, still standing, threatens to drink Trevor's blood, but Trevor just smirks, thinking he's about to take out Dracula's kid. Right then, Sypha shows up, fireball in hand, ready to fry Alucard. When Alucard realizes Sypha's a speaker, he chills out and lets Trevor go. Turns out, the whole fight was just Alucard testing them to see if they're tough enough to handle demons. He explains his backstory, including how his dad punished him for standing against wiping out humanity. In the end, Alucard suits up and decides to team up with Trevor and Sypha to take down the demons and end the war against humanity. About a year ago, before Lisa got snatched up by the church, she used to take care of the sick folks in her village. One of her patients was this lady, Mrs. Juvara, who had breathing problems. Lisa checked out her symptoms, went to her little workshop, and whipped up a remedy just for her. She told the old lady she'd be good as new in 5 days if she stuck to the treatment. As Lisa walked Mrs. Juvara out of her house, she spotted Bishop Mark and his crew of priests. It felt like Mrs. Juvara might have tipped them off because one of the priests gave her this knowing look as she left. The bishop barged into Lisa's home, claiming she was into witchcraft. Things got messy when one of the priests freaked out after seeing a centrifuge in action. He didn't know what it was and lost his mind. That just made the bishop more convinced Lisa was a witch. Lisa tried to cooperate and even explained it was all medical science, but the bishop wasn't having it. They tied her up, and as they dragged her out, she begged the bishop not to hurt her, warning him he might bring trouble on himself. But the bishop twisted her words, thinking she was threatening him, and ordered his men to burn her house down. Just like that, Lisa's life's work went up in flames. Now it's 1576, and Dracula is still grieving over his late wife, Lisa. After staying in his chambers for a while, Dracula heads to the war room to meet his generals. The meeting kicks off with Dracula venting about how much he despises humanity. He talks about wiping out all the humans in Wallachia and handing the land over to his demons. Judging by the looks on the generals' faces, most of them aren't fully on board with his plan. Even so, Dracula lets the 2 humans in his council, Isaac and Hector, present the next move in the war. One of the generals, Godbrand, gets heated and starts complaining about humans being part of the war council. Dracula shuts him down, explaining why he trusts Isaac and Hector. He says they both hate humans and aren't driven by bloodlust or selfish desires. After making his point, Dracula wraps up the meeting and leaves the room. Once he's gone, Godbrand keeps ranting about taking orders from humans. Isaac fires back with a sarcastic comment that hits a nerve. Later, Isaac and Hector leave the council and go to Dracula's chambers. They're curious and ask why he picked them to lead the war council. Dracula answers, saying his other generals are too driven by their own desires. He chose Isaac and Hector because they're disciplined and not motivated by pleasure or greed, making them perfect for his mission. Isaac and his buddies start to figure out why Dracula wants them on his war council. During the meeting, Hector zones out and starts thinking about how awful his parents were to him as a kid. Meanwhile, Isaac swears he'll help wipe out humanity for Dracula. The next day, some folks in Gresset are busy fixing up the town while others are getting rid of demon bodies. Sypha says goodbye to her grandpa and feels pretty down now that it's just her and Trevor. As the elder rides off, Trevor shows up and tries to cheer her up, but totally blows it with his clumsy words. It gets so bad that Sypha has to tell him what to say, but at least she gets what he was trying to do. Elsewhere, Alucard is sitting alone in a wrecked building, sketching a picture of his mom and dad. While he's drawing, he starts thinking about his father and how much he hates that he has to go against him to save the world. He really misses his mom and can't stand what he has to do to make things right with humans. He gets teary-eyed but pulls himself together when Trevor shows up behind him. Back at Dracula's castle, Hector is in his workshop using alchemy to summon a demon into a new body. Godbrand walks in and apologizes for losing his temper during the war meeting, but he doesn't waste time and asks Hector what he thinks about how the war's going. Godbrand thinks it's a mess, like the vampires are just raging at humans without any real plan except causing chaos. Hector pushes back, saying maybe Dracula actually wants that chaos, but he starts to wonder if Godbrand might have a point. Then, some servant vampires burst in with fresh corpses from Gresset for Hector to work on. One of the bodies is the bishop, and Hector thinks he'd make a killer beast with fangs. Godbrand leaves, and Hector uses his enchanted weapon to summon a demon. He stops stops when the castle suddenly shakes. It turns out Dracula is moving the castle to a new spot in the country. As expected, the castle vanishes and reappears somewhere else, wiping out anything caught in the magical field. Back in Gresset, Trevor and Sypha link up with Alucard to chat about Dracula's moving castle. Sypha's like, that's just some made-up story, but Alucard shuts her down saying, nah, my dad's castle actually moves magic makes it happen. Trevor then throws out the idea of hitting up his old family crib, the Belmont estate, because that's where all the good stuff for taking down Dracula is stashed. He's convinced they'll find the tools and knowledge they need buried there. Sypha's on board with the plan, but, of course, she and Trevor can't resist throwing shade at each other whenever they get the chance. As the sun sets, the trio heads out of Gresset, making their way toward the Belmont estate. Meanwhile, over in Dracula's war room, the generals are at it again, bickering non-stop. Not even Dracula's presence can shut them up. Then, out of nowhere, another vampire strolls in and steals the spotlight. Enter Carmilla, your classic no-nonsense feminist type from Styria. She shows her respect to Dracula but wastes no time stirring the pot, pointing out how divided the war room is. Then she really pushes Dracula's buttons by asking why he didn't turn Lisa into a vampire to save her life when he had the chance. The room goes dead, silent, everyone's shook. Dracula somehow keeps his cool and tells Carmilla to meet him in private. During their one-on-one, Carmilla tries to come off all smooth, but Dracula's stone-cold expression makes her drop the act real quick. When she gets the green light to talk, she insists she didn't mean any disrespect. She doubles down on her earlier comments, saying the generals were already wondering the same thing, so she just said it out loud to get it out in the open. Then she twists her words, making it seem like she was just trying to help Dracula address the issue with his crew. The meeting wraps up, and Carmilla walks out with a suspicious grin, clearly up to something. That night, Trevor and the gang set up camp in the woods. At some point, Sypha gets curious and asks Alucard why he doesn't fry in the sunlight. He explains he's half human, half vampire. Then he starts talking about his dad, mentioning how Lisa was a doctor, which leaves Trevor kind of stunned. Even though it's hard for Trevor to wrap his head around it, it's clear Dracula's not just a monster, he's a genius when it comes to science and philosophy, knowing stuff humans have forgotten over and over again. Alucard goes on about his dad's big plans for the world, including wiping humans off the map entirely. Suddenly, he stops mid-sentence, hearing something weird in the woods. Moments later, demons pop out of nowhere, ready to attack the crew. Alucard jumps into action, moving like lightning to take out the first two demons. The next pair charges at him together, but he holds his ground and keeps them at bay. Trevor eventually jumps into the fight, using his spear to take down both demons. Then, more demons show up and start spitting fireballs from their mouths. That's when Sypha shows up, using her magic to redirect all the flames. She even uses her powers to tank some hellfire straight from a demon's gut. When the demon tries to fire again, she focuses the flames in its stomach and blows it to bits. After the explosion, one demon manages to escape and flies off to report back to his bosses. Later that night, Isaac is in his workshop, whipping his own back. Blood drips down as he remembers a time when his old master used to do the same to him. Back when he was a slave, he got caught snooping around the workshop. When his master asked why, Isaac said he just wanted to learn and help out. At first, the master seemed to chill out, but then he kept whipping Isaac, saying it was for discipline. That's when Isaac snapped. He attacked the guy and stabbed him through the eyes, killing him. Now, Isaac tells himself over and over that love doesn't exist in this world. Godbrand shows up not long after, with some servants carrying the demon that escaped Sypha's flames. He chats with Isaac about the demon from Arges, but then gets curious about why Isaac keeps whipping himself. Isaac says it helps him find peace and discipline. Even though it sounds twisted, Godbrand doesn't push for more answers. Instead, he leaves, throwing out a snarky comment about Isaac doing his voodoo magic on the dead demon. Once Godbrand is gone, Isaac puts down the whip and goes to his operating table. He feels a little bad for the dead demon, but still cuts it open and uses alchemy to bring it back to life. Afterward, he steps away from his workshop and heads to the war room to join Dracula and the other generals. There, Isaac and Godbrand talk about the demon squad that got attacked near Arges. Carmilla interrupts, suggesting they send troops to a city called Brela. She argues that taking over Brela will stop humans from escaping Wallachia, but the fact that Brela is surrounded by water makes some vampires uneasy. The room erupts into arguments until Dracula demands silence. Isaac speaks up, opposing Carmilla's idea, but Hector argues that Brela is their best shot at winning the war. Things get tense when Isaac mentions Alucard teaming up with a Belmont in Gresset. Carmilla freaks out, knowing how dangerous a Belmont can be when it comes to taking out vampires. She gets fired up and insists they should raid the Belmont estate to destroy anything that could threaten their kind. Now, Dracula is stuck trying to decide whether to go along with her plan or not. Back when Hector was a kid, he was a sharp little dude who had a soft spot for animals. One time, he came across a dead dog on a farm and felt bad for it. But, get this, he brought the dog back to life. The dog wasn't exactly normal looking, but Hector didn't care. He played with it and got super attached. When he took the dog home, his mom totally freaked out. Now, in the present, Hector's thinking back on that memory while summoning a demon into a new body. At first, the demon's all aggressive, but it chills out once it recognizes Hector as its master. Meanwhile, Carmilla's watching from a distance and decides to have a little chat with Hector. She kicks off the convo by hyping up his skills and smarts, but then dives straight into talking about Dracula's weird mood swings lately. Hector admits he's worried about Dracula and thinks the guy's kinda indecisive right now. Carmilla casually suggests sending a crew to the Belmont estate just to see what Hector thinks, but Hector shuts that down, saying they'd need Dracula's green light for something like that. Carmilla gets curious and asks how Hector even met Dracula. Hector explains that Dracula showed up at his private crib in Rhodes after Lisa's death was still fresh. Dracula was hurting and needed Hector's help to summon demons from hell. When Hector asked why, Dracula said humans had killed his wife. Hector could tell the guy was in deep pain. Hector agreed to join Dracula, but only if humans were treated like livestock for vampires and their numbers were cut down to match the blood demand. Fast forward to now, Carmilla listens to Hector's story and then asks if demons are loyal to whoever summons them. Hector confirms, and she leans in, whispering about sending a crew to Brela and convincing Dracula to attack the place. Meanwhile, at midnight, Trevor and his crew are tearing through the woods until they hit the Belmont estate. There, Trevor spots a seal that leads to his family's research. Alucard checks out the seal and feels like something's off. Trevor mentions some old-school technique to open it, but admits he never learned it because his family got exiled. Sypha steps in, using magic and ancient languages to crack it open. After a few spells, the seal just disappears. Trevor takes the lead, trying to protect his family's name from Alucard, who's throwing around accusations about black magic. They head deeper into the building, and Sypha stumbles on this creepy, dark library. She uses fire magic to light the place up, revealing what's inside. Seeing all those neatly arranged books and artifacts totally blows her mind, because she can dive into as many as she wants. Meanwhile, Alucard's got this thing where he's constantly trying to trash talk the place whenever he gets the chance. Since the Belmont family's roots are in France, Sypha asks Trevor why they even ended up in Wallachia to begin with. Hunting Dracula, Alucard says while staring at some vampire skulls. Trevor's feeling all kinds of awkward and guilty, so instead of talking, he shows Sypha a few books. Then he spots this treasure chest that catches his eye. He's curious, so he pulls it out and starts messing with the locks. Using a knife, he pops them open, and even the magical lock on it just kind of dissolves. When he opens it, he's grinning like crazy because inside is this legendary whip his family used back in the day. It's called the Morning Star, but Sypha's not super impressed. She's all about the books right now, and even checks to see if Alucard's actually enjoying himself. But she kind of forgets that the whole place is basically a shrine to wiping out Alucard's kind. Meanwhile, Godbrand sneaks off to have a private chat with Dracula in his room. When he finally gets to talk, Godbrand asks Dracula what the vampires are supposed to eat if humans are wiped out. He's like, where's the blood gonna come from? Dracula suggests stockpiling blood or feeding on animals instead. But Godbrand's not feeling the whole pig blood idea, even though Dracula's like, don't worry, I'll take care of you. Godbrand keeps pushing though, until Dracula gets seriously pissed and backs him into a corner. Bro's confidence takes a nosedive, and he's swallowing hard, just praying to get out of there alive. Eventually, he leaves, but not before Dracula unloads a bunch of insults on him. As he's storming out, Godbrand vents to Carmilla, saying Dracula's lost it. He even mentions how Dracula looks like he hasn't fed in ages. When she asks why Dracula would starve himself, Godbrand straight up says, suicide. He figures Dracula's trying to join his wife in death and drag the whole vampire race down with him. While he's walking off, Carmilla tells him to stick around, but he assumes she's trying to hook up with him or something. That pisses her off, and she kicks him down the stairs, like, hard. While he's lying there in pain, she steps on him and starts laying out her plan to take Dracula out of the picture. At the crack of dawn, Godbrand charges into the woods, going full savage on innocent humans just to satisfy his bloodlust. The insecure dude slaughters people left and right, and even chucks one poor soul off a cliff. But plot twist, this fool wakes up and realizes it was just a dream. Bro's so thirsty for blood, he's dreaming about it now. Instead, he gets served a pig for breakfast, and somehow that's enough to make him start rethinking Carmilla's plan. Meanwhile, over at the Belmont estate, Trevor stumbles across this weird mirror and asks what it's all about. Alucard checks it out and explains that it's a portal for transporting stuff. Then he switches it up, saying it's actually for spying on other places. Classic Alucard. He also calls the Belmont estate a junkyard, which sets Trevor off. But before he can clap back, Sypha pulls him aside and warns him not to take the bait. To lighten the mood, she cracks a joke about his name, and Trevor can't help but laugh. Alucard, meanwhile, just glares at the mirror like it personally insulted him. Back at Dracula's crib, Carmilla's still working on Hector, trying to turn him against the big guy. She throws shade at Dracula, saying if he really cared about Lisa, he would have turned her into a vampire to protect her. Hector mulls it over and admits he's confused about Dracula's motives. Carmilla jumps on that, saying a dude who doesn't have his head straight shouldn't be leading a war. She even freaks Hector out by reminding him he's human, and this whole war is against humans. Hector pushes back, saying Dracula promised not to wipe out everyone. But Carmilla's not buying it. She hints that Dracula might not be as honest as he seems. Then she drops the big question, is Hector ready to ditch Dracula to win this war? Hector's torn, so he takes Carmilla to his workshop to keep their convo private. She keeps pitching her plan to overthrow Dracula when the castle reaches Brela, and she's not letting up on Hector, either. The dude finally cracks and admits Dracula's too powerful to fight. Carmilla smirks, clearly pleased, and glances at the dead bodies scattered around the room. A little later, Dracula leaves the castle to visit Isaac at his place. They start reminiscing about how they first met. Back in the day, Isaac was being hunted by magicians who planned to sell his body parts for rare ingredients and magic gear. Dracula swooped in and saved him, becoming the only person who ever had his back. Isaac's talking in the here and now, straight up loyal to Dracula. Meanwhile, Dracula's all fired up, saying humans stabbed him in the back again, and now he's ready to wipe them out for good. Isaac, even though he's human, doesn't seem to care. He thinks Dracula's on a whole other level and is ready to ride or die for him. On the flip side, Godbrand's out here rallying a crew of vampires to chase some wild dream he cooked up earlier. After a while, Dracula rolls back to the castle, uses his magic mirror to chuck Lisa's coat somewhere unknown, and steps out of his room. He starts picking up on weird vibes from his crew, even Hector, one of his go-to alchemists. He heads over to Isaac's workshop, venting about how his people are acting shady. He even brings up Hector, but Isaac cracks a joke, calling Hector a little kid. Turns out, Isaac knows Hector struck a deal with Dracula and got played. Still, he figures Dracula doesn't owe anyone the truth since he's the boss and does what he wants. Meanwhile, Godbrand and his crew of starving vampires hit up a nearby town, breaking into houses and causing chaos. Honestly, I've never seen a vampire as gross and low-class as this clown Godbrand. Some vamps sip blood clean from the neck, but this guy and his brain-fried crew go all out, slaughtering humans left and right. Over at the Belmont estate, it's freezing in the library, and Sypha's shivering so bad she ends up snuggling with Trevor under his rank blanket. As she puts up with the smell, she talks about Alucard, saying he feels hollow, like he's beyond just being sad. She describes him like he's this cold, empty void whenever she's near him. Trevor tries to defend feeling down, but when he looks back, Sypha's already knocked out, fast asleep. Godbrand eventually gets back to Dracula's castle and heads straight to Isaac's workshop. Big mistake. He starts running his mouth about Carmilla's plans, saying they make more sense than Dracula's messy war. The way he's talking screams betrayal to Isaac. As Godbrand turns to leave, Isaac lashes out, whipping him from behind and ripping his throat open. For all his big talk, Godbrand's screaming like a baby, trying to protect himself from a human. But Isaac doesn't let up. He whips him again, pins him to the ground, and finishes him off with a stab, sending his traitorous soul straight back to hell. The next day, Isaac is chilling outside Dracula's crib, scattering Godbrand's ashes as his way of saying goodbye. Meanwhile, Carmilla's using some magic mirror to chat with her crew back in Styria. She's telling them to gather up at Brela before Dracula's castle shows up there. Then there's a knock at the door, cutting her convo short. Turns out it's her informant, and they drop the news that Godbrand is MIA. Little does she know, Isaac's out there spreading the ashes of the dude she's looking for. Over at the Belmont pad, Alucard and Sypha are still digging through books, hunting for useful stuff. While they're at it, Sypha's venting about how her people pass down knowledge by word of mouth instead of writing it all down. She thinks it's limiting, and that they should really start jotting things down. Alucard, on the other hand, is more hung up on how close Sypha and Trevor are getting. He feels like Sypha's too easily distracted by Trevor and thinks he's not exactly the ideal guy. At one point, Sypha catches on to Alucard's little mind games and realizes he's just trying to make Trevor prove himself all the time. Eventually, Sypha stumbles on an important book and asks for another one to help her crack the languages in it. While she's working on that, Alucard casually mentions how his dad taught him a ton of stuff when he was a kid. He slips up and reveals he grew up super fast, so Sypha starts teasing him, calling him a kid stuck in a grown-up's body. Elsewhere, Hector takes Isaac out of Dracula's castle for a private chat. Isaac's feeling a bit iffy about Hector, but agrees to hear him out. In the woods, Hector starts talking about how the war room's a mess, and suggests moving Dracula's castle to Brela to get everyone back on the same page. Isaac's not immediately sold on the idea since it could play into Carmilla's hands, but he eventually agrees, thinking it might keep her scheming in check. They even share a laugh at the end when Isaac cracks a joke about Godbrand. After their talk, Hector heads to Carmilla and lets her know everything's going as planned. Carmilla's thrilled because not only did Hector get Isaac on board, but he's also set up some demons to hit the Belmont estate. Next on her list is getting Isaac to pitch the Brela move to Dracula himself. Her plan is to use that moment to lock in Isaac's support and make it impossible for Dracula to say no to relocating the castle. As expected, Isaac talks to Dracula and lays out the idea of moving the castle to Brela. When asked why, Isaac spills the beans that Hector isn't feeling the vibe in the war room. Dracula starts doubting Hector's loyalty, but Isaac backs him up, saying Hector's still on their team. Dracula listens, mulls it over, and agrees to move the castle, as long as humans keep suffering. Back in the day, Dracula wasn't always this moody and down. Once, some merchants from Kronstadt disrespected him, so he took his time gathering intel on their town. When he finally attacked, the men sent their women into the woods but came back for their loot. Big mistake. Dracula watched from afar and made an example of them, tearing them apart one by one. Heads chopped, throats ripped open. Dudes crushed. It was brutal. It got so bad that Dracula actually enjoyed it, going on a spree. He even drained one poor guy dry and left him for dead, while another dude begged for his life. Dracula let him live but fed him to his crew instead. Then, while flying around the area, some idiot archer took a shot at him. Bad move. The guy got stuck in his tower, and Dracula gave him a nasty bite to the throat. Turns out, 40 merchants had disrespected Dracula, and he made sure not to kill more than 40 people. In the end, he put their bodies on pitchforks for the women to see. Dracula shares this story with Isaac but wraps it up by saying death doesn't mean anything to him anymore. Soon after, Carmilla strolls in with Hector and convinces Dracula to move the castle to Brela. As Hector leaves, Dracula tells Carmilla to let him know when it's time to make the move. Isaac heads out too, but promises to stick with Dracula until the Brela plan is done. Meanwhile, Carmilla shows Hector a whole different side of her. She takes charge, manipulates him, and tricks him into following her lead since he's already betrayed Dracula. Now Hector's totally screwed and has to play along with Carmilla to stay alive. That evening, Sypha is chilling with a book when she finds a spell that can lock Dracula's castle in one spot. She gets hyped and explains it to Alucard and Trevor. But then, the library starts shaking. Alucard senses trouble, and sure enough, demons are at the library's entrance. More demons roll up to the entrance of the underground library, trying to bust through the seal. One of them, armed with a magic spear, can't even scratch it, but another one doubles in size and goes full brute force on the seal, shaking the whole library underneath. Meanwhile, Alucard grabs the enchanted mirror and marks it so Sypha can start working her magic on it. Trevor's stuck in his own head, torn between rushing out to fight and probably die or staying back with Sypha. Alucard gives him a talk, and, next thing you know, Trevor, drunk and all, volunteers to go out and throw down with the demons. The demons keep hammering on the seal, and it's looking rough. Eventually, they hit it hard enough to crack it wide open. Trevor hustles up the building while Alucard fires up the mirror and locks it onto Dracula's castle. At the same time, Dracula makes his move, teleporting the castle to Brela. Alucard's shaken when the castle vanishes, but he quickly tracks it down. Over in Brela, the castle pops up, and people start running for their lives. Alucard finds the castle in no time, but Trevor's stuck in a brawl with a massive demon. He pulls out the Morning Star Whip to even the odds, but can't land a clean hit on the demon's throat. Even after getting slammed to the ground, Trevor bounces back, drives his sword into the demon's throat, and finishes the job. The demon, confused and flailing, loses a limb, and then its life. But Trevor doesn't even get a breather before another demon comes at him. Meanwhile, Hector bails from Dracula's castle with Carmilla, who's dragging along Bishop Mark's zombie corpse like it's no big deal. Most of Dracula's army is crossing the bridge to invade the city. Right when they're in the middle of the bridge, Carmilla orders the bishop to turn the whole river into holy water. As the rotting corpse starts casting the spell, Carmilla's crew gets into position in the city, waiting for the signal. Then, one of them gives the order to blow up the bridge. Chaos kicks off. Dracula's forces tumble into the river and get vaporized instantly. Some of Dracula's generals, seeing the massacre, nope out and head back to the castle. Meanwhile, Trevor's still in survival mode, going toe-to-toe with a skilled demon. He's moving fast, dodging punches left and right. Eventually, he outsmarts the demon and pins it to the ground with his whip. But just as he's catching his breath, another demon swoops in above him, cooking up a fireball in its gut. Trevor spots it just in time, whips his Morning Star at the demon's belly, and boom, fireworks light up the sky. So the other demon Trevor's squaring up with comes at him again, this time going full beast mode. Trevor starts off playing defense, but then he flips the script, charges at the demon, and takes it out with a solid stab. As that demon bites the dust, another one swoops in from behind. At this point, Trevor's probably kicking himself for signing up to play Demon Slayer. This new one's got wings, which makes it a whole lot harder to deal with. One second, it's in front of him, the next, it's dragging him straight into a world of hurt. Trevor fights back with a couple of bones he picked up and somehow manages to put the demon on defense. After taking a tumble, Trevor shakes it off, gets back up, and goes in for round 2. This time, he cranks up the speed and stabs the demon, sending it flying off a high platform. Just as that one hits the ground, another demon shows up and goes after Trevor. Meanwhile, over at Brela's river, your boy, the bishop, is getting roasted literally because he was too dumb to bail before the spell kicked in. After he's toast, Carmilla's crew rigs up a fake bridge across the river to storm Dracula's castle. The vampire army charges in, and Carmilla drags Hector along, letting him know there's no turning back now. Poor guy's running like a scared goat since he doesn't really have any other options. Back at the Belmont estate, Trevor's having a hell of a time trying to take down the last demon. Sypha sneaks away from the chaos with a stack of books while Alucard's busy working on his enchanted mirror. She makes her way to Alucard, fires up her magic, and starts trying to take control of Dracula's castle through the mirror. While she's doing her thing, Carmilla's forces roll up to the castle and start ramming the gate with a massive chunk of wood. The moment they hit the gate, Isaac gets a bad feeling that something's off. When the gate finally opens, Isaac and some other vampires charge at Carmilla's crew to stop them from reaching Dracula. Isaac eventually heads upstairs to warn Dracula about the betrayal. Once he describes what Carmilla's army looks like, Dracula puts 2 and 2 together and realizes she's behind the attack. That alone sends Dracula into a rage because, let's be real, no one's taking his castle. Sypha keeps working her magic on the castle, but the massive gears in the engine room are putting up a fight. Right then, Trevor shows up just in time and takes out a demon that's gunning for Sypha. She cranks up her magic even more and gets partial control of the castle, making it teleport all over Brayla. The constant jumping around causes the river water to wash away a chunk of Carmilla's forces. Luckily for her, Carmilla's smart enough to grab Hector and get the hell out of there before things get worse. The water floods into Dracula's castle, taking out a bunch of vampires, though some of Dracula's loyal generals manage to survive. In the end, Sypha finally locks down full control of the castle and moves it out of Brayla. Turns out, though, she parks it just a few steps away from the Belmont estate. Alucard's keeping it cool, but you can tell he's feeling the heat because he knows it's time to face his dad. The castle's in full-on chaos, and Dracula's rage is off the charts, turning the moon blood red. As the clock ticks down, Alucard's chilling in the library, lost in thought, planning his next move. He steps out with Sypha and meets up with Trevor, ready to head out. Sypha works her magic, literally, creating an ice path that carries all 3 of them out of the underground lair. Once they hit the surface, Alucard takes the lead toward the castle, even though he's not exactly hyped about facing his dad. The madness inside the castle comes to a halt as soon as Alucard walks in. The enemy vamps, despite their beef with each other, team up to take on Alucard, Trevor, and Sypha. Alucard kicks things off by whipping out his enchanted sword and charging at the vamps. Trevor goes full beast mode, smashing one unlucky vamp into oblivion and sending its soul straight to hell. Meanwhile, Sypha's out here looking like a firebending boss, throwing flames everywhere and keeping the other vamps at bay. Alucard, in wolf form, dives through the fire and rips out a vamp's throat. Another vamp tries to pull a slick move on him, but Alucard calls in his sword and takes them out. Sypha, showing off her ice powers like she's got nothing to prove, starts firing ice bullets and takes down a whole crew of vamps. 2 vamp generals rush her, but Trevor steps in to handle one of them. The other general, well, she falls for Sypha's trap and ends up split in half. Yeah, not a pretty sight. Trevor, on the other hand, squares up with a skilled vamp in close combat. He's dodging attacks like a pro, and then Bombhay traps the vamp with his whip. The last thing that Vamp remembers is the explosive end of the whip blowing up in his face. Alucard faces off against a sneaky vamp general who uses smoke clones to mess with him. It's a tough fight, but Sypha steps in and freezes her solid. Then, with some quick thinking, she launches Trevor into the air, and he teams up with Alucard to take down 2 vamp generals at once. Meanwhile, Isaac's out here holding the line, making sure no enemy vamps get anywhere near Dracula. He's wrecking them left and right with his whip when he spots Alucard in the castle. Even though he's just a regular human, Isaac dodges Alucard's sword like a total badass. Alucard's probably kicking himself for missing that shot because Isaac's bald head was basically a perfect target. Isaac wastes no time and rushes to warn Dracula about Alucard's arrival. He follows Dracula to his chambers, where Dracula's straight up shocked that a human like Isaac would risk his life to protect him. But while Isaac's distracted, Dracula uses his enchanted mirrors to teleport him to the desert. Isaac makes it to the other side of the mirror, gets up, and immediately tries to jump back to Dracula, but the portal slams shut. He drops to his knees, hurting and kicking himself for not noticing the mirrors earlier. Meanwhile, Alucard runs into his dad on the other side and calls him out for a fight. Even though Dracula hasn't fed in years, he's hyped to give his son a serious beatdown. But when Trevor and Sypha show up, Dracula's face turns deadly serious. The fight kicks off with Alucard swinging his sword and shoving Dracula into a wall. Unfortunately, Dracula brushes it off, blocks him, and smacks him hard across the face. Trevor steps in next, but gets slammed into the corner of the room like it's nothing. Sypha tries to jump in, throwing fire at Dracula's face, but he eventually gets sick of her and tosses her to the ground like a rag doll. Trevor, furious, charges Dracula and lands a flurry of punches, but it's like hitting a brick wall. Dracula doesn't even flinch. Dracula grabs Trevor in a chokehold, but Alucard swoops in just in time to save him from getting crushed. Dracula's still holding his ground, even after Sypha burns his face again, but it only slows him down for a second. He quickly slaps both Sypha and Alucard to the floor. When they get back up, Trevor tries to stake him, but it's a no-go. The 3 team up and manage to land a few hits, but it's Trevor who does the most damage when he whips out the Morning Star whip. After a huge explosion, Dracula stumbles but stays standing for a moment before finally hitting the ground. At that point, he realizes his opponents aren't playing around. Dracula summons a massive fireball and hurls it toward Alucard. Sypha tries to hold it back, but gets overpowered in seconds. Luckily, Alucard and Trevor jump in to help her send the fireball flying back at Dracula. Alucard follows it up and slams the fireball straight into his dad. The explosion flings them into another part of the castle, leaving Dracula and Alucard alone to duke it out. Dracula goes on the offensive, coming at Alucard with crazy speed and brute strength. They clash mid-air, but Dracula's clearly got the upper hand. A few punches later, Alucard's forced to play defense. The fight drags on until they end up in another room, where Alucard's struggling to catch his breath. Desperate Desperate, he grabs a stake and tries to use it, but Dracula just laughs at him. Alucard fires back, saying Dracula's been dead inside ever since Lisa died. He accuses Dracula of wanting to die, and with that, he manages to stab him in the chest but misses his heart by inches. The fight keeps going, but now Dracula's starting to look worn out, and Alucard's finally keeping up. They end up in the gear room, where Alucard gets pummeled with punches. Finally, he gets mad and kicks into overdrive, moving so fast that Dracula can barely keep up. Alucard lands a brutal punch to Dracula's face, but his luck runs out when Dracula slams him into the ground, knocking him out cold. Alucard wakes up just in time to take another brutal hit to the face. As he struggles to stand, Dracula comes at him again, relentless. But then Dracula stops. He looks around and realizes they're fighting in the room where Alucard grew up. The rage drains from his face, and he's suddenly filled with regret. The moonlight shifts back to normal, and Dracula admits to himself he doesn't want to fight his son anymore. Overwhelmed with sorrow, he stands there, waiting, as Alucard approaches him with the stake. Accepting his fate, Dracula lets Alucard stab him in the heart. Alucard hesitates for a moment but finally pushes through and ends his father's life. As Dracula's body makes one last attempt to attack, Trevor jumps in and decapitates him. Moments later, Sypha burns Dracula's remains to ash, sending him straight to hell. After it's all over, Alucard is left feeling crushed by guilt. Trevor and Sypha try to comfort him, reminding him that he saved humanity, but the grief is too much. At least he manages to hold back his tears in front of them, because if he didn't, well, that's a whole nother story. Later that morning, Alucard is wandering around the castle, trying to clean up what he can. The place is a total wreck after the battle a few hours ago. Sypha is blown away by all the cool science gear and structures in the castle. She tries to deny messing up the engine room, but Trevor calls her out, reminding her she used her magic to force the gears to move. After bickering, she wonders what Alucard's next move is now that Dracula's gone. Alucard shows up almost immediately and says he's thinking about heading to his vault in Gresset. Trevor cuts in and suggests Alucard take over the Belmont estate instead, asking him to look after Dracula's castle and his family's knowledge. Alucard is floored. He never thought someone as grumpy as Trevor would make such a generous offer. Meanwhile, out in the desert, Isaac is kneeling by an oasis, trying to drink some water. A group of guys on horseback rolls up and starts mocking him. Isaac ignores them at first, but when their cocky leader threatens to turn him into dinner, Isaac flips the script and takes him out. The rest of the crew freaks out and tries to fight back, but Isaac takes them down one by one in some seriously gruesome way. Zone guy even gets his face peeled off. That night, Isaac grills some meat over a fire and eats it for dinner. Afterward, he sits there thinking about whether he should use alchemy on the fresh corpses. In the end, he decides to resurrect them as demons for his cause. The next day, he's back on the move through the desert, now with a squad of demons riding horses alongside him. Later that morning, Sypha is chatting with Trevor about everything they've been through together. She's supposed to meet up with her people soon, but tells Trevor she wants to go on more adventures with him once she's back. She's hyped up from all the monsters they've defeated and the close calls they've had, and she's itching to create more crazy memories with him. Trevor listens, and even though her idea sounds nuts, he's totally on board. It's obvious Sypha's gotten pretty attached to Trevor. She's super comfortable around him. Their conversation wraps up with her holding onto his arm as they watch a gorgeous sunset together. Over in Brela, Carmilla is lurking in the shadows and asks Hector to tell her when the sun goes down. Instead of running away while he has the chance, Hector just hangs around, letting sunset catch him in Brela. Once the sun's gone, Carmilla steps out and says she's heading back to Styria. Hector asks her about Dracula's castle and why it moved the way it did a couple of nights ago. That's when he learns the castle was rigged with magic and that Dracula's dead. Carmilla says she confirmed it using enchanted mirrors. There's no sign of him. Hector is completely stunned, but Carmilla tries to cheer him up. Of course, her version of cheering him up involves turning him into her personal pet. She has him restrained, and as Hector tries to figure out what's going on, Carmilla beats the crap out of him. It gets so bad that he's literally begging for his life, but she doesn't let up. After all those years serving Dracula, this is what he gets: a brutal beating from a narcissistic vampire. When she's finally done, she licks the blood off him and calls him a good pet. As time passes, Carmilla's forces get ready to leave Brela for Styria. Hector, now collared like a dog, clings to the ropes around his neck to avoid being dragged across the ground. He's already regretting everything, but it's too late. Carmilla's in charge now. The next morning, Trevor and Sypha are getting ready to leave Dracula's castle. Alucard stands back, watching them. When they're done, Sypha says goodbye, and Trevor gives a polite wave. Alucard, on the other hand, flips them off with a faint smile. Trevor cracks up and drops an F-bomb before hopping on the chariot and riding off. In the woods, Sypha is buzzing with excitement. Another adventure with Trevor is about to kick off. Honestly, it seems like she sees herself as Trevor's girl, but that's a whole other story. Meanwhile, back at the castle, Alucard returns and has a vision of his father. The hallucination fades after a bit, and he starts thinking about how the castle must have felt to his dad when he was alive. He makes his way to Dracula's old study, sits down, and starts remembering what it was like to be a kid. As the memories come rushing back, he sees his mom and just breaks down, crying like a little kid. About a month later, Alucard is living a pretty chill life. He heads out early to hunt for his dinner way different from your typical bloodthirsty vampires. On his way back, he grabs some veggies, whips up a nice fish dinner, and then starts chatting with some dolls. Yeah, you heard that right, dolls. One looks like Trevor, and the other is Sypha. Dude's clearly losing it, and it's only been a month since Trevor and Sypha bailed from the castle. Meanwhile, Trevor and Sypha are cruising through some woods in their chariot, heading to who knows where. They notice a pack of demons tailing them, but keep riding, trying to lure the demons into a better spot for a fight. When the demons finally pop out of the trees, Sypha acts all helpless, like she's just some random chick, but she flips the script real quick. She jumps into the air, using fire magic to keep herself up. The first demon she spots gets roasted, and the next one? Boom, Trevor takes it out with his Morning Star Whip, leaving it in pieces. After that, Trevor calms his spooked horses, but that leaves him open to another demon's attack. He tries to fight it off, but ends up losing his whip and has to throw hands instead. While Trevor's dealing with that, Sypha's locked in with another demon. She dodges every attack like a pro, then torches the demon's face, sending it straight back to hell. With her fight wrapped up, Trevor's still in the thick of it, punching the demon but struggling to finish the job. He dodges most of its hits and uses the trees around him to stay out of harm's way. Eventually, he tricks the demon into a bad spot and breaks its legs. Meanwhile, Sypha chases another demon that's running on ice in midair. She gets close enough, leaps, and throws an icy spear right through its head. Back with Trevor, he's going full savage mode. He breaks the other leg of his demon opponent and finishes it off by snapping its neck. Exhausted, he drops to his knees, trying to catch his breath. Sypha shows up all hyped because she just took out a bunch of demons. Trevor drags the last demon's body to their chariot, figuring it'll scare off any other demons dumb enough to mess with them. That night, Carmilla and her crew finally make it to Styria, and they're wiped out. Her sister Sir co-leaders or whatever are pumped to see her, but it doesn't take long for them to realize that Carmilla's trip was straight up chaos. So, according to Carmilla, she lost her horses to some night creatures and a bunch of dumb humans fighting along her route. When her vampire soldiers roll into the castle, the last one to show up is Hector, and honestly, the dude looks like absolute trash. Carmilla introduces him to her sisters, calling him a thing, and tells Striga to toss him in a cell and chuck some food at him once a day. When they ask who he is, Carmilla just calls him a whiny bag of crap. Totally crushed, Hector does what she says and gets dragged into the castle like some sad stray dog. Once inside, they throw him, naked, into a cell and feed him a tiny piece of moldy bread. He tries to eat it but spots a termite crawling out of it, and boom, he's back to crying like a lost kid. Meanwhile, Carmilla's sisters Striga and Lenora welcome her back, and Morana grills her about the horses. Carmilla comes up with some lame excuses about losing a bunch of men and horses, but in the end, they hand her some virgin blood to drink. The sisters are just happy she's back, and it's clear they missed her. Later that night, this guy named Saint Germain shows up in a town called Lindenfeld and tries to buy groceries. The shopkeeper rejects his coins because they're from another continent, so he ends up overpaying her for an apple. Right then, Trevor and Sypha roll into town, dragging a demon's corpse behind their cart. Their arrival grabs everyone's attention, but Trevor steps out and explains they've taken care of the town's demon problem. Turns out, the place has been dealing with attacks that wrecked their food supply. The town's judge shows up and introduces himself to Sypha and her boyfriend. Not long after, some monk-looking dudes arrive, super interested in the dead demon. Their leader, Prior Sala, seems to know way too much about Dracula's death for someone who wasn't even there. Sypha pretends to know what's up with Dracula just to get more info out of Sala, but things get weird fast when he asks who killed Dracula. When they press him, Sala says he wants to kill whoever did it because he believes Dracula was trying to reunite humanity with his wife in hell. The judge shuts down the convo and sends Sala and his creepy crew packing. After they leave, the judge explains that Sala and his followers went nuts after their church got hit by a demon attack. While talking to the judge, Trevor and Sypha refuse to share their last names since they don't feel safe in the town. The judge understands and gives Trevor a friendly handshake before heading out. Afterward, a local offers Trevor some cash for parts of the dead demon. Sypha thinks it's sketchy, but Trevor convinces her they need the money. Then Trevor spots some beer and bolts over to grab a drink. The bartender gives him a free beer to thank him for killing the demons. While drinking, Trevor makes a crude joke about the beer being better than what adults do behind closed doors, which pisses off Sypha. She freezes his beer out of spite, leaving Trevor scrambling to apologize to his new girlfriend. Back in Styria, Hector gets doused with a bucket of cold water, even though it's freezing outside. He's left lying there in pain, crying his eyes out. Isaac rolls into a new town, and the locals freak out, running for their lives because of the demon squad trailing behind him. He parks his crew outside and tells them to chill while he heads into a shop. Inside, the old shopkeeper immediately clocks that Isaac's an alchemist. They start chatting, and the old guy, who Isaac calls Granny, mentions he knows the smell and taste of hell. Isaac cuts to the chase and asks about a big transmission mirror, but Granny doesn't have one. Instead, he pulls out a distance mirror that lets you see stuff far away. Following Granny's instructions, Isaac uses the mirror to locate Hector. When he spots Hector locked up in a cell, he cracks up, calling him a traitor. Then he checks where Hector's at and figures out he's in Styria. After he's done, Granny offers him the mirror for free, just being nice. Isaac's surprised but takes it, laughing at Granny's jokes as he gets ready to leave. When he steps outside, a bunch of soldiers with weapons and pitchforks are waiting for him. They tell him to get out of town, and Isaac's like, fine. But when they say he can't use the port to cross the sea, he's had enough. He lets his demons loose, and they rip through the soldiers like it's nothing, leaving no one standing. At the docks, a ship's captain is chilling by his boat, sipping on some booze. When his bottle's empty, he chucks it into the river and spots Isaac and his demon crew. The guy doesn't even flinch. Instead, he strikes up a casual convo with Isaac. Isaac jokingly threatens to kill him and everyone on the ship, but the captain just laughs it off, saying Isaac still needs a sailor. The captain's attitude catches Isaac off guard, and he agrees to pay him to board the ship with his demons. The captain, who's bald, seems pumped about the trip, saying it's going to be interesting. Meanwhile, Carmilla steps out of her room with a world map, ready for a big meeting with her sisters. She calls the map the future, and starts breaking down her plan to take over a bunch of lands. Her idea? Round up humans, pen them in, and use them as blood livestock. Her sisters think she's nuts, but they laugh when she jokes about how humans can reproduce like crazy if you leave them alone for 5 minutes. Striga even calls the plan genius, but points out a problem: they don't have enough soldiers to cover all the new territories. Carmilla fires back, saying she's got Hector, but her sisters push back again, reminding her that Hector's been treated like garbage, and his demons are still loyal to him, not them. Lenora listens in on the chat and steps up, saying she'll handle Hector herself. She promises that after she's done with him, he'll fall in line. The next morning, Trevor wakes up, and it's pretty clear he spent the night with Sypha. He rolls out of bed and heads to the market to grab some bread. While he's there, Saint Germain pops up, offers to pay for the bread, and then ropes him into a chat about the Belmonts. At some point, Saint Germain introduces himself, but Trevor just looks totally lost. Then, Saint Germain cuts to the chase and asks Trevor what he's doing in Lindenfeld. Trevor dodges the question and tries to leave, but he doesn't even take the bread with him. While Trevor's gone, Saint Germain spots Prior Sala and decides to strike up a conversation. Turns out, Saint Germain wants to get into the priory, but Sala's not feeling it. Saint Germain offers to help decode some books in the priory if Sala lets him in. After some back and forth, Sala agrees but only gives him limited access. Just as they're wrapping things up, Saint Germain suddenly asks Sala why he's so into hell. Sala spills the tea, saying Dracula's wife is alive in hell, and Dracula went to Brela to join her there. After dropping that bomb, Sala bounces with his crew, leaving Saint Germain pacing around and talking to himself like a lunatic. Meanwhile, back at the Belmont estate, Alucard is out by the stream fetching water when he notices something feels off. He pauses, tosses a rock into the woods, and then bolts into the trees. He ends up face to face with some random girl. He's ready to take her out, but she begs him not to, saying she wasn't hunting him. She explains that her buddy in the woods was just looking out for her because she wanted to talk to Alucard. The girl's name is Sumi, and her friend is Taka. They're both humans who used to be part of the vampire court under Cho, one of Dracula's generals. When Alucard hears they're after Cho, he tells them she's already dead. She got taken out in Brela during the attack. Even so, Sumi and Taka beg Alucard to teach them how to defend themselves and take down vampires. After some convincing, Alucard finally agrees and takes them to his castle. The castle blows their minds, but what really floors them is finding out Dracula's dead. Still, they're hyped about sticking around with Alucard and learning all they can from him. So, Sypha starts chatting with Trevor, bringing up all the wild stuff they've done together, like taking down vampires, setting monsters and demons on fire, and even dealing with some freaky flying goat that cracks them both up. She's totally stoked to be traveling with Trevor and doesn't regret a thing. In fact, she's ready for even crazier adventures. Trevor's on the same page, but then he starts talking about all the weird vibes he's been picking up in Lindenfeld. He's got a hunch that the sketchy priests at the priory are worshipping Dracula. Right then, the judge shows up and takes them to his office. The judge grills them about who they are, and finds out Trevor's a Belmont, and Sypha's a speaker magician. But he doesn't waste time and gets straight to the point that wants them to check out the priory. He dives into this story about what went down a few weeks before they showed up. Apparently, Lindenfeld got attacked by a demon horde, and the judge's crew fought them off. But during the chaos, one weird-looking demon crash-landed inside the priory. When the judge and his guys rolled up to the building, they heard people inside screaming like crazy. Then, this glowing light burst out of the windows, and the screaming stopped. After that, the whole place gave off this creepy dark energy, and lightning started striking all over the area, but eventually, it calmed down. When the priests finally came out, they had these charred pieces of the demon, but the judge thought something was off, like it wasn't all there. Plus, the priests looked totally messed up, like they'd been through hell. Things got even sketchier when they wouldn't let anyone into the priory, even for Thanksgiving. Since then, the priory's been drawing in all these broken, traumatized men to town. Now, the judge wants Trevor and Sypha to figure out what's really going on. Trevor's not exactly thrilled about it after hearing all that, but one look at Sypha and he's in. After the meeting, Trevor steps outside and tries to focus on the upside. At least the judge is covering their room and board, which is honestly the main reason he agreed. Meanwhile, Sypha's all hyped because she gets to dig into someone else's drama. Later that evening, Isaac's chilling with the captain, answering some deep questions about his life philosophy. He talks about how he used to hurt himself on purpose, claiming it helped him stay focused. The captain's pretty freaked out by this, but he keeps the convo going and asks why Isaac stopped. Isaac opens up about being part of Dracula's crew and spills the tea on Dracula's big plan to wipe out humanity. The captain's super confused though, since, you know, he's human too. He's sitting there wondering why humans are still around. And Isaac explains it's because Dracula got stabbed in the back. Then Isaac drops this wild story about how Dracula saved his life by chucking him into the desert, and the old man starts to realize Dracula's got some seriously mixed up motives. When the captain asks why Isaac's heading to Europe, Isaac spills the tea. He's out for revenge on the people who betrayed Dracula. He talks about this dude who gave him a magic mirror, and then casually mentions he's a forge master. Isaac's got this twisted belief that he's doing holy work by dragging tortured souls out of hell and stuffing them into broken bodies on Earth as demons. The captain just keeps his chill, even though Isaac's reasoning is way out there, and listens. Out of curiosity, the old man asks what Isaac plans to do after he settles the score with Carmilla. Isaac takes a beat to think and says he'll carry out Dracula's old mission. He's convinced humans are a shady, toxic bunch, and the captain's like, yeah, I get it. But then he points out that if you wipe out humanity, all the good stuff like kindness and compassion goes with it. He dives deep into human nature and suggests that instead of wiping everyone out, Isaac should teach people how to act better. He's not against violence, but thinks Isaac should focus on spreading his ideals to change humanity for the better. Isaac tries to argue his case, but he starts seeing the captain's point and keeps listening. Later that night, Lenora steps out of her room and swings by Hector's cell. She sends the guard away, but Hector's already onto her, thinking she's up to something. They start talking, and Hector asks about Lenora and the vampire sisters who run the show. She calls herself the diplomat and formally introduces herself, even offering him some berries to snack on. Hector's hesitant at first, but after she pushes a little, he gives in and eats them. Then, out of nowhere, Hector flips the script. He grabs Lenora, pins her to the cell, and wraps his hands around her neck, threatening to kill her if she doesn't let him out. But here's where Hector messes up big time. He forgets he's dealing with a vampire who's been around for ages. Lenora doesn't even break a sweat. She slips out of his grip like it's nothing and beats the crap out of him. After she's done, she leaves him with a warning. Don't ever try to play her for a fool again. Back at Dracula's crib, Alucard walks into his room and catches Sumi and Taka checking out his weird doll collection. He's totally embarrassed, but tries to play it cool by offering them some drinks. As they hang out, Alucard keeps them entertained, chatting about random stuff like the castle's gears and other not-so-important details. Eventually, he gets curious and starts asking Sumi about her old master, Cho. Sumi explains that Cho was a total badass who lived in northern Japan before all the Dracula drama went down. Back then, Sumi and Taka were stuck in Cho's hidden fortress. Turns out, Sumi had been handed over to Cho as a kid. Cho was kind of twisted and got a kick out of having a human honor guard, but she really loved letting vampire hunters try to take her down. The kids Cho captured had to watch as she completely wrecked these hunters. One time, a hunter fought back hard but ended up trying to off himself when he couldn't win. Cho stepped in though, and drained him dry right in front of everyone. Sumi and Taka saw everything she did and figured out her strengths and weaknesses. They started planning their escape, and when Cho left to join Dracula's war council, they made their move. They wiped out Cho's vampire guards, freed the other kids, and got the hell out of there. After they escaped, they decided to hunt Cho down, even though they knew it was risky no matter what they did. Alucard listens to their story and realizes they've been through hell. Feeling for them, he agrees to train them and even offers to teach them some magic tricks. Meanwhile, over in Styria, Marana and Striga are chilling in a high tower, and it's pretty obvious they've got something romantic going on. Marana's thankful for Carmilla being on the council since she's the reason she met Striga. Striga, on the other hand, is stressing about making Carmilla's big plan for world domination actually happen. As she vents about all the problems with the plan, Marana reassures her, saying things will work out. She reminds Striga of everything they've already got, and says they can always get more. In the end, Striga laughs it off and starts getting hyped about turning Styria into a full-blown empire. The next day, Saint Germain heads over to the priory, but on his way, he notices how messed up the priests are. When he gets there, the place is a total disaster, and the smell of rotten crap is almost too much to handle. Sala shows him where the books are, but then starts spewing some creepy stuff about how demons bring light. Saint Germain just stands there, stunned, while Sala keeps going on about his twisted ideas about Lucifer and demons. So, Saint Germain spots the symbol on Sala's armband and asks him what's up with it. Sala explains that the demon who wrecked the prior gave it to him. Saint Germain, totally shocked, tells him the symbol stands for sulfur, which philosophers use as a sign for hell. Now, a regular person would probably freak out hearing that, but not Sala. Dude gets hyped like, hell yeah, I get to rock an armband that screams hell. Then he just bounces, telling Saint Germain to stay put in that room. Once Sala's gone, Saint Germain grabs a book to chill with while Trevor and Sypha sneak around the place looking for clues. They're caught by a priest who's like, get out of here now. Sypha tries to charm her way out of it, but the priest isn't having it and warns her to leave. Trevor's spidey senses start tingling because the priest's vibe is seriously sketchy, and he suspects something shady is going on. Before things escalate, more priests roll in, so Trevor and Sypha leave. On their way out, Sypha calls out the priests for rocking a hellish symbol, which ticks them off. But but Trevor drags her away before it gets ugly. Outside, they run into the judge, who's clearly pissed they stirred up trouble. The judge's mood shifts when Sypha mentions the prior reeks of magic. Later that night, Lenore visits Hector in his cell. This time, she keeps her distance but offers him an apple and casually asks what he wants. Hector, munching on the fruit, goes, "Shoes." They start chatting, and Lenore brings up what Dracula offered Hector back in the day. Hector seems confused and says he never really wanted anything from Dracula. Lenore then spills the tea. Her sisters plan to shrink the human population and farm them like livestock for blood. Funny thing is, that's kind of what Hector wanted back when he was with Dracula, but now, he's suspicious and thinks she's playing him. Lenore picks up on this and uses her smooth talking skills to convince him she's legit. She even promises to hook him up with a reward in exchange for his talents. Before leaving, Lenore offers to get him a pair of shoes if he lets her chat with him again. Hector cracks a joke, she laughs, and it's pretty clear she might be into him. Meanwhile, the next day, Isaac steps off the captain's ship with his demon crew and heads into a new town. Some soldiers show up, telling him to scram. Isaac tries to reason with them, pointing out the ship's already gone, but they're not listening and want to throw hands. Big mistake. Isaac loses his cool and unleashes his demon squad, who tear the soldiers apart. Then, as if that wasn't enough, he raises demons from their corpses and sends them after the rest of the soldiers. It's a total bloodbath. The next day, Trevor wakes up and heads into the woods. On his way, he brushes off a fox and keeps moving until he gets to a small pool of water. There, he starts talking to himself, venting about how tired he is of his life. He can't figure out why he's even bothering anymore. Sure, he liked having no friends, being kicked out of the church, and all that, but he's confused about how everything changed because of Sypha. Just then, the judge shows up and starts answering his questions. Trevor immediately suspects the judge has been tailing him, but it turns out the judge just goes to that spot to clear his mind. They end up having a chat about their lives, both as adults and when they were younger. After a while, they share a drink and head back to town. When they reach the town gate, the judge notices a strange symbol drawn nearby. Trevor shrugs it off, thinking some cranky kid must have done it, but the judge insists no kid in his town would pull something like that. Meanwhile, Saint Germain is hanging out in the priory, waiting for the right moment to snoop around. He stops reading when he notices the priests have left the building. Pulling out a glowing gem, he mutters, "It's really here," and lets his curiosity take over. He follows the gem's glow down to an underground part of the priory. At the stairs, he spots a huge alchemical symbol that also seems to represent hell. Before he can take a step down, Sala steps out of the shadows and catches him off guard. Panicking, Saint Germain makes up an excuse about looking for the restroom. Sala doesn't fully buy it, but eventually accepts Saint Germain's story about public toilets being common in the capital. Sala tells him to take care of business outside the priory, and Saint Germain leaves, heading back into town. On his way, he runs into Sypha, who strikes up a conversation about the priory. Saint Germain admits he's been investigating it, and also reveals he's a magician. When Sypha brings it up, he says he doesn't like to show off his magic. Lowering his voice, he tells her about his latest discovery. Something shady is going on in the priory, and it reeks of a night creature. While he's talking, Sypha notices a carved symbol on the wall, and moves closer to check it out. A closer look reveals that the symbol represents hell and sulfur. When she asks about it, Saint Germain says the priests claimed it came from a visitor. This clue gets Sypha thinking, trying to piece together what really went down when a night creature crashed into the priory. So she snaps out of her thoughts and straight up asks Saint Germain what he's doing at the priory. He's kinda cagey about it and just says it's personal. Then Trevor shows up, talking about some weird symbol he saw at the town's gate that looks like the one tied to Saint Germain. Trevor offers to grab a drink with him, but Saint Germain still won't spill the beans about his priory business. Trevor doesn't take no for an answer and jokingly drags Saint Germain along to a bar. Meanwhile, Alucard is busy training Sumi and Taka. He's using this long sword to keep them at a distance, making sure they can't get too close. The session goes on for a bit, but no surprise, Alucard totally schools them. Sumi complains about the long sword, but Alucard warns her to never let a vampire get too close. During the training, Alucard lets his guard down for a second, and Taka sneaks in a playful attack. They all end up on the ground laughing. Alucard gets up, carrying Sumi on his back, and suggests showing them some cool stuff in the castle. Taka and Sumi are all for it and happily follow him. Back in Lindenfeld, Saint Germain tries to distract Trevor with some story about his wild drinking days, but Trevor cuts him off and demands to know what's up with the priory. Caught off guard, Saint Germain starts talking about the infinite corridor, which is rumored to allow travel between dimensions. Trevor and Sypha have heard of it before, but Sypha thinks it's a gateway to hell. Saint Germain says both are true but leans into the hell theory. He shares that he lost someone close to him in the corridor and has been trying to find a way back in to save them. He shows Sypha a gem and reveals that the portal to the infinite corridor is under the priory. This totally shocks Sypha, but she keeps listening to get more details. Now, she's starting to think that Sala's actions at the priory and the strange signs around town aren't just random. That night, Lenora is chilling with Hector, who's finally got some clothes on. As he's putting on his shoes, she cracks a joke about him looking more human now. Hector thanks her for the outfit, but gets a little flustered when she teases him about his junk flopping around if he were naked. She invites him to go for a walk, but there's a catch: he's gotta wear a collar to keep him in check. Hector's not thrilled about it, but he sucks it up and agrees, just so he can get out for a bit. It's nighttime, and the air outside is freezing. Hector's shivering until he figures out that all the heat in the castle is being funneled into the prison. He's shocked. He thought Carmilla was totally cold-hearted, but this catches him off guard. While they're walking, Hector starts talking about how beautiful the daytime is, but Lenora shuts him down. She takes him to a spot where the kingdom looks stunning under the moonlight. Hector admits it's a great view, but keeps fidgeting with the collar. When Lenora asks why it bugs him so much, he explains it reminds him of the time someone else slapped one on him, Carmilla, who beat the crap out of him back in Brela. Lenora, of course, defends Carmilla, saying if she really wanted him dead, he wouldn't be standing there right now. She admits Carmilla's got a temper, but insists she's logical about her choices. Hector listens, but can't stop thinking about how Carmilla made him betray Dracula. Lenora argues that Carmilla actually saved him since Dracula had gone completely off the rails by then. Meanwhile, Striga is eavesdropping on their chat and later relays Hector's complaints to Carmilla. Carmilla just laughs it off when she hears Hector's gripes, but Striga's got bigger worries. She's stressing about where they're gonna get enough dead bodies for Hector to make demons. She's concerned that if they start using the local humans, it's gonna cause a major food shortage for her people. Later that night, Hector heads back to the castle and finds out he's got a new cell. This one's a serious upgrade. It's got a bed, books, and even a table to work at. He's genuinely grateful to Lenora for hooking him up. As he steps inside, Lenora leans in close, teasing him by almost kissing him before walking away. Meanwhile, over in Lindenfeld, Trevor and Sypha are up late talking about Saint Germain. They feel bad for him and aren't sure if they should step in to help. His story really hits Trevor hard. It's just so sad and lonely. Sypha feels the same and suggests they try to help him figure things out. So, there's this sketchy priest sneaking around under their apartment, carving some weird symbol on the wall. Meanwhile, Saint Germain is off in some barn, caught up in a nightmare. In his dream, he's wandering through the infinite corridor, desperately searching for a way to reach someone he's lost. He checks out a bunch of different dimensions but gets super frustrated when he can't find her. Just when he's about to lose hope, he finally sees her. He calls out, reaching for her to grab his hand, but instead, she sends him a gem that tracks the portal. The portal shuts, and Saint Germain starts falling until he wakes up, gasping for air, totally freaked out. Once he calms down, he grabs his diary and writes down everything he saw in the dream. He's seriously missing his love and is determined to do whatever it takes to get her back. Meanwhile, Isaac is chilling by a campfire, surrounded by his squad of demons. While meditating, he calls over one of the demons who can actually talk. The demon comes over, and they start chatting about the demon's past. Turns out, back when the demon was human, he was a scholar in Greece. He says he used to be a philosopher, but the church back then thought his work was sinful. They betrayed him, hunted him down, and tortured him. Even though he lied to try and save himself, they still killed him in the end. Now, he's kind of glad he ended up in hell because being a demon gives him a chance to get revenge on humanity. He thanks Isaac for letting him be part of the crew and promises to make the most of his second chance. Isaac just listens with this serious look on his face, probably already plotting his next big move to wipe out humanity, just like his old boss, Dracula. The next day, Alucard heads out of the castle with Taka and Sumi tagging along. Taka lets out a big yawn and asks Alucard if he's finally going to show him the rest of the castle's armory like he promised. Alucard doesn't even bother answering and just leads the way to the Belmont estate. They get to the library, and now there's this pulley system at the entrance so people don't accidentally fall to their death trying to get in. Alucard fires it up, and the thing slowly lowers down to the bottom. Once inside, he flips the power on, and Sumi's all wide-eyed, thinking he's doing some kind of magic. She clearly doesn't get the whole concept of electricity and light bulbs. Alucard gives them a little tour of the library and starts showing off all kinds of tools and weapons designed to take out vampires and demons. On the way, Sumi and Taka keep throwing out questions about vampire hunting, but Alucard tells them to chill and focus on one thing at a time. Taka, though, looks kinda stressed, worried he might not know enough or have the skills to take on some big, bad vampires when the time comes. Meanwhile, back in Lindenfeld, the judge spots this kid running around the marketplace and stops him. He reminds the boy he's already been told not to do that, but then softens up and asks if he wants some apples. The kid gets all excited and takes off in the direction the judge points, heading for an apple tree. As the kid runs off, the judge turns and notices Saint Germain is already up and about. Saint Germain brushes him off and heads straight to the priory. There, he checks out a book and notices something's off. As he flips through it, he realizes a chunk of pages is missing. While he's deep in thought, he spots Sala and calls him over. They start talking about the missing pages, and Saint Germain seems pretty bothered since those pages apparently detailed ways to bring people back from hell. Sala plays dumb, saying he doesn't know anything about it, then jokes that maybe someone used the pages as toilet paper. He walks off, leaving Saint Germain even more suspicious. Later that morning, Isaac rolls into a new settlement and sees this old woman, Miranda, sitting outside her place. She clocks him as an alchemist right away and tells him there aren't any fresh bodies around for his work. When he asks why, she says the settlement used to be full of people, but now it's empty. Isaac immediately suspects she wiped them out, but Miranda denies it, saying that kind of thing is beyond her powers. Isaac realizes she's more of a witch than he thought and listens to her story about how a crazy magician drove all the humans out of the settlement. According to her, this dude's dream is to build a city, and now he's using humans humans, like worker ants, to make it happen. The fact that she's the only one left in the settlement really bugs Isaac, but she just keeps showing off her powers. At one point, Isaac loses his cool and almost pulls out his dagger, but stops when Miranda powers down. She explains that using magic drains her, but she could still defend herself against the crazy magician. Isaac sits down while Miranda complains about how the magician has everything he needs. She's clearly pissed, but when she finds out Isaac is heading to Styria to kill people, she actually smiles. Then she drops a bombshell. The mad magician has a massive transmission mirror. This stuns Isaac, but Miranda keeps going, telling him the mirror can transport a ton of people at once. Now, all Isaac can think about is taking out the magician and snagging the mirror. Miranda even suggests turning the magician's minions into demons to help with Isaac's mission. Isaac figures the humans would probably prefer becoming demons and joining him since the magician has treated them so badly. While she's talking, Miranda flashes this super creepy, evil grin that even freaks Isaac out. He realizes she's way more sinister and intense than he is. Then he gets up, ready to head to the next town and take on the mad magician. That afternoon, Trevor and Sypha spot two priests drawing some weird symbols on a building in Lindenfeld. Sypha wants to question them, but Trevor skips straight to fighting. He throws down with both priests, and even though he's outnumbered, he holds his own and knocks one of them out cold. The other one takes a nasty punch to the face and drops like a rock. Trevor grabs the unconscious priest, dumps him in a barrel, and hauls the other one off to the judge's house. Meanwhile, the judge comes out of a room in his house looking super shaky and nervous. When he finds out Trevor and Sypha are outside, he freaks for a second, but then pulls himself together with a deep breath. Trevor barges in with the beat-up priest and starts grilling him about the symbols, but the guy won't talk. Sypha fills the judge in on what she knows about the demonic signs, and the judge realizes the priests are up to something big. Meanwhile, Saint Germain sneaks down to the lower level of the priory after making sure all the priests are gone. At the bottom of the stairs, he sees this bright light and gets a little spooked, but then he spots a demon, chained up and nailed to a wooden frame at the other end of the staircase. At Styria, Miranda wakes up in the afternoon and sees Striga already up and at it. When Miranda asks why she's awake, Striga says she's reworking her battle plans. She's stressed about Carmilla's big ideas because they don't have enough soldiers to pull it off. The weapon supply chains are also a headache, and Miranda tries to distract her from overthinking it. What's really messing with Striga's head, though, is how Hector needs dead bodies for his work while the vampires need living humans for their blood. It's a tough balance, and Striga can't quite figure it out. Miranda suggests throwing stacks of cash at mercenaries to get them on their side, and then turning them loose on the humans. Striga likes the idea and cracks a smile. Just then, Carmilla barges in, grumbling about the two lovebirds keeping her from catching some sleep. When asked why she's up, Striga explains she's making sure the battle plan is solid. Even though she's exhausted, Carmilla agrees to sit down with them and talk strategy. Meanwhile, Taka and Sumi leave the Belmont estate, thinking about how lonely Alucard seems. They feel bad for him. He saved humanity from being wiped out and even killed his own father to do it. But they also think Alucard might be isolating himself on purpose, like he's punishing himself for what he did. Taka suggests they offer him something to cheer him up, and Sumi is on board with the idea. Over in Lindenfeld, Saint Germain sneaks down to the lower level of the priory and is floored when he sees a demon. He's struggling to wrap his head around it when the demon gets aggressive, and he bolts out of the room. On the way out, he runs into Sala and totally freaks. Thinking fast, he makes up some excuse about just stretching his legs. Before leaving, he warns Sala to get out of the building, saying the previous residents were messing around with hell. The mention of hell piques Sala's interest, so he listens closely. Saint Germain starts talking about a door to hell hidden in the building and warns Sala to leave before things get worse. But really, he's just trying to throw Sala off the scent of what he was doing downstairs. After spinning his story, he bounces. At the same time, the judge finds out that Sala is planning to bring hell to Earth. This blows his mind as a priest spills the beans about the demon in the priory and how it's been bossing the other priests around. Saint Germain rolls up and drops the bomb that there's a night demon hanging out at the priory. Trevor, not missing a beat, knocks the priest out cold so Saint Germain can spill the tea. As Saint Germain breaks down what he's found at the priory, the judge decides it's time to rally his crew and go full attack mode. He suggests hitting the priory at sundown, and Trevor's all in. The judge heads out to get his guys ready while Trevor talks strategy. Somewhere in the convo, Saint Germain figures out Trevor's trying to help him get into the infinite corridor, and he's super grateful. Meanwhile, Sala and his shady squad of priests are huddled around the night creature at the priory, plotting their next move once the sun dips. Over at Dracula's castle, Alucard is playing tour guide, showing his guests around. But Taka and Sumi are a little too fixated on checking out the castle's armory. They're even starting to think Alucard's keeping secrets from them. Alucard pauses when Taka speaks up, then reassures them they've got plenty of time to explore. He promises to show them more of the castle later. Back in Styria, Hector notices a ring on Lenora's finger when she swings by his cell. When he asks about it, she shrugs it off, saying she's always worn it and he just didn't notice. She explains it's a loyalty thing she shares with her sisters. They start chatting, and Hector brings up something he read in Vampire Lit that caught his interest. While he's geeking out over the book, Lenora's on the other side of the cell, setting up the bed for what looks like a baby-making session. Once she's done, she calls him pretty to grab his attention attention and mentions how unfairly he's being treated, considering he's a key player in Carmilla's master plan. She even teases the idea of letting him out, but quickly backtracks, saying she's loyal to her sisters. She invites him to sit on the bed, and the guy actually does it. Poor dude tries to keep his cool, but his emotions and hormones sare all over the place. Then she drops a bombshell. She suggests they ditch Styria because she thinks Carmilla's plan is messed up. As the sun sets, the judge, his crew, and the others march toward the priory, ready to confront Sala and his creepy gang. On the way, Sypha gets curious and grills Saint Germain about the infinite corridor, but totally freaks when she learns he can control it. When they reach the priory, the judge calls out Sala, but the guy doesn't even bother to respond. Turns out, Sala's busy downstairs, leading a demonic ritual with his brainwashed priests. When the sun dips out of sight, a family in town gathers around the dinner table to chow down together. But as they're eating, the creepy demonic symbol on their door starts glowing, and boom, the house goes up in flames. The same thing happens to other families chilling in their homes. Trevor and the crew are watching all this craziness from a distance, and notice the glowing souls of the dead heading straight for the priory. Sure enough, the fiery souls zoom into the priory, making a beeline for the demon hiding underneath it. Outside, the judge is trying to figure out what the heck is going on. When he starts voicing his concerns, Sypha explains it's all part of some soul harvesting ritual. That ticks him off, so he orders his men to attack the priory. Meanwhile, Sala's crew comes storming out, locked and loaded, ready to throw down. While all this chaos is brewing, Hector is off in Styria trying to hook up with a royal vampire, and Isaac is trekking to another city to confront a crazy magician and take over his human army. The poor humans in that city are being worked to the bone, doing brutal labor that's worse than death. Isaac shows up, unleashes his demon squad, and frees the humans from the magician's spell. Some of them get turned into demons, beefing up Isaac's army even more. Meanwhile, Taka and Sumi are over at Alucard's place, offering themselves to him for the night. Back in Lindenfeld, Sypha and Trevor are battling Sala's men, who are putting up a serious fight as they try to get into the priory. The two of them use their badass combat skills to torch and destroy the dirty priests, sending them straight to hell. Saint Germain is losing his mind, watching heads roll, guts spill, and brains splatter. He almost gets taken out by a sneak attack, but Sypha saves him by throwing up some ice blocks just in time. Down in the priory's depths, the fiery souls finally reach the demon's body. This kicks off some wild dimensional rift action, leaving Sala stunned. A horde of demons comes pouring out of the portal, ready to wreck anyone standing in the way of the ritual. Back in Isaac's world, he's dealing with some resistance as he tries to take control of the magician's slaves. He takes out a few of them, but realizes his army isn't enough to handle the situation. Spotting a bright light coming from a tower, he heads that way, turning more dead humans into demons as he goes and sending them to fight the slaves. But then, the slaves pull some weird move, forming a floating ball in the air that starts attacking Isaac's demons. Dodging attacks left and right, Isaac focuses his power and summons a massive demon into a corpse. This giant demon shows up, electrifies the slaves, and gives Isaac the opening he needs to reach the tower. He fights his way to the top, taking out more slaves along the way, but not without getting a little banged up himself. Over in Lindenfeld, flying demons start pouring out from under the priory, attacking everyone Sypha's crew and Sala's men alike. Trevor and Sypha jump into action, taking out the demons left and right. With one swing of Trevor's Morning Star Whip, a whole pack of demons explodes and gets sent back to hell. But then, a big, nasty demon shows up on the priory roof, looking like he means business. Trevor charges in first, with Sypha backing him up. Even with their combined efforts, they can't seem to do much damage to the ugly beast. Eventually, Trevor gets fed up and breaks free from the demon's grip, ready to bring the fight to the next level. So, Sypha's up in the air, throwing down with this gnarly demon. She's got her ice magic on lock and totally outsmarts the dude, setting him up for a mid-air trap. By the end of it, the demon's toast lost his head, limbs, and heart to Sypha's icy blades. Down below, Trevor's in beast mode, taking on another demon up close with his Morning Star Whip. He shortens the whip and absolutely wrecks the demon until it's nothing but a lifeless heap on the ground. Once that's done, Trevor links up with Saint Germain and Sypha at the priory so they can head down to the basement. Meanwhile, Isaac's climbed to the top room of the tower and runs into this jacked up slave. Doesn't matter how ripped the guy is, though Isaac takes him out with a killer move and the dude drops dead. Isaac keeps it moving but gets hit by some crazy spell from this unhinged magician. Now, if you know Isaac, you know he's all about focus and discipline. He pulls himself together, breaks free from the magician's spell, and comes out on top. The magician's dumbfounded, like, how'd he do that? But before he can process it, boom, he's got a dagger in his heart, and he's done for. As soon as he's gone, all the slaves outside collapse, finally free from the spell. Isaac's hyped we's got a whole army and a transmission mirror to track down. Over in Styria, Lenora's playing Hector like a fiddle, seducing him into pledging loyalty to her. And this dude? He's letting his hormones do the thinking and doesn't even realize he's getting played. Back at Dracula's castle, Taka and Sumi pull a fast one on Alucard, using some seductive tricks to slap enchanted bracelets on him. The magic kicks in right away, locking down Alucard's movements. Meanwhile, Lenora slides a ring onto Hector's hand, sealing some kind of loyalty contract. It's painful as hell for Hector, but it's too late. he's already screwed himself over. Back in Lindenfeld, the demon under the priory finishes soaking up the flame of souls and uses it to blow open a portal to the infinite corridor. The portal zeroes in on hell, straight to the icy zone where Dracula's chilling with his wife, Lisa. Meanwhile, Isaac is wandering through the crazy guy's towers, hunting for the transmission mirror Miranda told him about. After a few minutes of coming up empty, he busts through a locked door and finds pieces of the mirror just floating in the air. He takes control of the mirror and pieces it back together. The first person he spots in the mirror is Miranda, who gives him a wave. After that, he steps away from the mirror and sends his demons off to keep up the killing spree. Back in Lindenfeld, a demon possessed by a soul goes after Trevor and Sypha, spitting hellfire everywhere. More demons come charging out of the portal, trapping the two of them in the middle. But they don't back down, they jump right into the fight. Sypha throws fire and uses her elemental magic, while Trevor swings his Morning Star Whip and uses brute strength. He takes down one demon easily, but another one jumps him from behind. Sypha gets creative, freezing the ground so she can slide across it smoothly. Once she's on the other side of the room, she launches an icy disc that takes out 3 demons at once. Trevor is holding his own, fighting off 2 demons at the same time. He swings his whip fast, making sure not to give his enemies any openings. But then, a demon throws a spear at him, and he hits the ground. Sypha, meanwhile, is dodging arrows from another demon. While she's at it, she notices a different demon gearing up for a nasty magical attack. She doesn't flinch, she counters it, and burns him to ashes. Back in the fight, Trevor draws the attention of the soul-possessed demon. He gets ready to defend himself, but quickly realizes his whip isn't doing much damage. That's when it hits him. He's gonna have to kill this thing over and over before it's really dead. With that in mind, he prepares for the next attack, but the demon knocks him down again. Still, Trevor gets back up, ready to go another round. Meanwhile, Sala bursts out of the priory, panicked, and runs straight into the judge. Sala catches him off guard and stabs him in the stomach. Even though the judge is bleeding out, he offers to help Sala escape the town quickly. Sala is stunned he didn't expect the judge to help him. The judge points him toward an apple tree in the woods, saying there's a way out past it. Sala doesn't waste any time and bolts for the woods. Back in the fight, Sypha is still dodging arrows and facing off with the demon shooting at her. As she's moving along, she spots water on the floor and uses some magic to zap the demon into oblivion. Meanwhile, Trevor cranks up his attack game, going all out against the demon possessed by souls. Every time he gets knocked down, he bounces back up, ready to throw hands. But then, one time, he gets up and just loses it going full beast mode, beating the souls right out of the demon. He even tanks a straight-up hellfire blast, though the explosion sends him flying back a few feet. Across the room, Saint Germain is working on taking control of the infinite corridor. When he spots Dracula on the other side, it clicks the demons are trying to bring Dracula back to life. Freaking out, Saint Germain jumps onto the Souljack demon and uses his glowing gem to take control of it. He tries to redirect the portal to find the person he's searching for and close it. Once the portal opens to where he needs to go, he lets the demon go and leaps in to shut it down. With him gone, Trevor channels a crazy amount of energy into his Morning Star Whip and absolutely wrecks the demon, sending it straight to hell. The demon dies on the spot, but the explosion starts making the priory collapse bit by bit. Over at Dracula's castle, Alucard is begging Taka and Sumi to let him go, but they're not having it. These two idiots think Alucard's hiding something and plan to stake him in the heart. Alucard pleads, swearing he's not using them, but they don't care. As they go for the kill, Alucard summons his sword and slashes their throats. Sumi and Taka try to stop the bleeding, but it's already game over for them. Back in Lindenfeld, Trevor and Sypha manage to get out of the priory just before it collapses. They spot the judge lying on the ground, but it's too late to save him. When they ask what happened, he says he killed Sala and starts talking about an apple tree in the woods. Before he dies, he tells Sypha to burn his house to the ground. Meanwhile, Sala is running for his life in the woods. He stumbles when he sees the apple tree and falls into a pit filled with spikes. He dies instantly from multiple stab wounds. It turns out the judge had set a trap for him. Later that night, Alucard is in Dracula's castle, crying because he had to kill Sumi and Taka. Back in the woods, Trevor and Sypha find the judge's trap. Trevor notices some tiny bones under Sala's body and starts wondering what's up with that. Later, they head to the judge's house to burn it down. Trevor insists on checking behind a certain door, and when he does, he finds the shoes of missing kids from the town. Turns out, the judge had a sick habit of killing people who crossed him by using that pit. This discovery leaves Trevor and Sypha disgusted as they leave the house. Sypha burns it to the ground without a second thought, hating herself for ever coming to Lindenfeld in the first place. Meanwhile, over in Styria, Carmilla is holding a meeting with her sisters about her big plans to expand the kingdom. Lenora walks in with Hector and tosses some rings to her sisters. She explains that the rings make Hector's demons loyal to all of them. Carmilla is grinning ear to ear. Lenora just solved her demon problem. Hector, on the other hand, realizes he's been completely screwed over. After the meeting, he loses it, yelling at Lenora before collapsing on the floor, totally defeated by the life he's now stuck with. Lenora, though, just tells him she saved him by making him her pet. The next morning, Trevor and Sypha are ready to leave Lindenfeld, both looking seriously pissed. On their way out, Trevor gets real with Sypha, warning her that things are only going to get darker from here on out. Later that morning, Alucard returns to his castle, and at the entrance, Sumi and Taka's bodies are hanging on stakes.